Imagine getting robbed at gunpoint at your place of work, then being forced to pay back the stolen money to your employer. Well, one Las Vegas bartender says this happened to him, and now he's suing. The local news caught up with him to share his side of the story. Let's take a look.
A quiet Friday morning inside the Lodge Wallapai, quickly turning violent when an armed gunman storms in demanding cash. The bartender, with his hands up, is 42-year-old Edward Parker.
It's December 2020. We're in the middle of COVID. People are fighting for jobs left and right. I suppose I let the idea of having a steady job with steady income cloud my judgment.
Cloud his judgment, he says, because hours after handing over $3,900, Parker says his employer told him he had to pay the money back.
I wasn't thinking right. I just had a gun shoved in my face, and I signed the document.
This document, a signed contract saying $300 would come out of his paycheck until the full amount, $3,937.35, was all paid off.
What was the time between when you were robbed and when you signed that document?
3 to 4 hours, tops.
Parker now lives out of state. His attorneys say the lodge coerced him to sign that contract.
Ouch, the worst part of this is that right after he paid back every cent, he still got fired. Also, it's important to note that police charged the armed robber in a string of armed robberies from September to December of 2020, as in there was zero connection. It's not like this was some sort of inside job. Joining me now to weigh in, criminal defense attorney and anchor at Law and Crime Network, Bob Bianchi. Bob, thank you so much for joining me. So, Bob, this story really stood out to me. I feel so bad for this employee. Obviously, this is his side of the story. I haven't reached out to the business owners there at the lodge. But that being said, based on everything that we've heard here, it seems like the employers really wronged him here.
This is really unbelievable, Stephanie. I mean, it's not laughable, but I mean, here this guy has a gun stuck in his face. He's defending the patrons to make sure nobody gets hurt, that he doesn't get hurt. And thank God nobody did get hurt because of the actions that he took. And then for them to shove a contract in his face, to have him sign it, to say that you now have to give us the money back, is just really, it's just outright unconscionable. And as far as the law is concerned, the fact that he signed a document under those circumstances can easily be struck down as being coerced, that he didn't have an opportunity to be able to fully deliberate upon it. And moreover, he's basically being threatened with his job to sign that contract. I used to represent a bar when I first started in my legal practice when I was a young man. And I mean, I'm just thinking of like situations that happened where there was a problem at the bar. They usually went to that person to try to compensate them for what they went through, either a lack of security or an injury that occurred. Here, the bar did the exact opposite. It is literally outrageous.
Yeah, and it looks like this man, Edward Parker, he did the right thing here. He didn't escalate the situation. Nobody got hurt. I mean, I don't know how much more perfectly this could have been executed.
Yeah, I mean, as a former prosecutor, I used to go around my county and we had 44 law enforcement agencies, and we used to actually go to businesses and target harden them, the term we would use, as to what you should do in a circumstance like that. And the number one rule is don't be a cop. Don't be a hero. Give them what it is they want. Your life and the lives of the people that are in your business are far more precious than $3,000 and $4,000. So the problems that we used to have is when people were trying to take the law into their own hands and actually fight people like this. So he did exactly what the training is around the country with respect to doing what he should do to protect the patrons and the business. And then the business spanks him for it. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so, I mean, if you think of you're in the situation, it's like my life or the cash in the register, it's pretty obvious which way you're going to go. And, you know, I'm kind of stunned that the employer, they pull out this contract out of nowhere. It's like they obviously produced it. I doubt that they had that sitting around available for them. And they thought it would be a good idea to approach the employee after such a traumatic experience within hours of the robbery and make him sign this. And then, as I pointed out, after he paid back every cent, then they still fired him.
You know, Stephanie, it's so funny you mentioned this, because when I was first reading this story, a word just popped into my head. The fact that you're right. They don't have contracts like, hey, in case a guy puts a gun in your face, let's go hit let's go pull that out of the Word file and have the guy sign it. Someone actually thought to do this, which is the word I came up with when I read it. I was like, wow, that's ghoulish. that's the word that just popped into my head, that was what they were thinking about, is the CYA. Not even CYA, they're actually extorting money from the employee that saved the patrons in that location by doing what he did. And then to the point you bring out, the cherry on top is this poor guy is in the middle of COVID and he's working this job and he's actually like regretting in his mind, saying, I guess I made a bad decision by wanting to work. That's the state of mind that this guy is in, which is not, I get where he's coming from, but then they go and they fire the guy after he winds up paying back all the money. That's like double ghoulish.
Yeah. And then there was an update to the story. Apparently the Labor Commission, they facilitated a settlement with Parker and the lodge for $5,500, but Parker didn't accept the money, which I think is smart on his part. But when it comes to damages, obviously he's suing here. What type of damages do you think he could make? What type of damages do you think he has?
Great question, Stephanie. I mean, on the issue of the contract, I think that the legal issue there is that contract is going to be considered null and void. But now, okay, let's look at it like the contract issue never happened. This is kind of like a law school question. So, okay, what liability would the bar have for a guy coming in with a gun? And what those cases usually come down to is whether or not the bar knew or should have known that there was a security risk at that location. So if there were a number of other previous incidents and things of that nature, and they didn't have the proper protection and security, then there's a good basis for a lawsuit. But short of that, and we just don't know the facts yet, I'm kind of curious myself when I was reading is like, what would be the legal cause of action that he would have against the bar? Certainly to recompensate him for the money he gave them, that's one thing, but what would be the emotional damages that he would be entitled to? What would be that theory? And the only one I can come up with is a lack of appropriate security if they knew or should have known something like this could occur.
Yeah, and the reason I bring this up is because you think of the crime surge going on in cities across the country, and a lot of employees are kind of have to defend themselves, and they might end up in these type of situations. So again, the notice out there to our viewers: if you're ever in this situation, don't sign a contract that you're going to pay back the stolen money. That's my advice. Now I want to shift gears here. I'm on Instagram quite a bit, and I see a lot of these social media influencers and see some of the things that they're promoting, and it's always interesting. That being said, there's a Dallas social media influencer who's being sued by the Texas Attorney General basically for deceptive trade practices. So this person, she was promoting a healthy lifestyle. She had diet plans for people who were signing up for her programs. And it turns out that they actually weren't tailored for the individual, and that could have caused some harm. So let me show you a video of this social media influencer so our audience knows who we're talking about. Roll tape.
You're just getting started, please find some kind of program, whether it's one from Pinterest, whether it's from the internet, whether it's from an online coach. I do have programs on my website, shameless plug, beatonfit.com. There are so many different options to choose from. Honestly, just find one that works for you, stick with it, be consistent, and be patient. Pay attention to how your body feels when you feed it. And I can go two directions with this. Make sure that you're obviously putting nutrient-dense, healthy, nutritious foods into your body if you want to see results. I hate to break it to you guys, but no one got lean or lost body fat eating donuts, pizza, and ice cream all day, every single day. That would be a perfect world if that were the case, but that's just not the truth.
And now, according to this lawsuit, she scammed thousands of clients who she sold the fitness and nutrition plans to. And you know, some of these health plans, some of the women were actually trying to gain weight and live a healthier lifestyle. And it turns out, according to this lawsuit here, that she was giving them calorie intakes that were too low for even their ideal body weight plans. So there's a lot going on here. And think of a lot of the women who signed up for this, who had eating disorders and so on.
Yeah, so, you know, a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, buyer beware. And there's some level of truth to that you have to be somewhat conscious of what it is that you're purchasing, Stephanie. But in this particular case, the deceptive fraud or deceptive practices laws pretty much throughout the United States, each state has them, essentially is indicating is that you can't say things that are deceptive and offer things and then not provide them. To the point that you're bringing out, I think the problem that she's going to have in this case is the fact that she is specifically telling them them, give me this data, input it into this information sheet, and I'm going to give you an individual catered plan, and I'm going to coach you. And to your point, there were not only misrepresentations, there were people that were trying to gain weight, and she was doing calorie reduction. There were people that didn't get individualized personal plans, and a number of people started to realize, in fact, they were just getting pretty much a standard thing that was being given to them. So that individual plan and individual coaching, which she promised to give for a price, was not being delivered upon. So essentially what a prosecutor or somebody like I used to do is, what I want to determine here is, when she enters into those contracts, did she have an intention to actually perform on it and was just malfeasant? Or was it just a scam all along and everybody was just going to get the same thing? She was going to pocket the money and had no intention from the beginning to give these personalized plans. If the latter is the one, that is that she had no intention on doing it, and it wasn't just a mistake in how her programming was working or what have you, she's going to be in deep trouble.
Yeah. And, you know, her side of the story is that she didn't intend to do any of this, and that she kind of jumped into this industry. And obviously this is booming. You see a lot of these self-promoters promoting whatever their lifestyle choices are, and people want to duplicate and follow that. I was looking at one comment from one of the customers. They said they spent $115 on one of her plans back in 2014. She said that Brittany made it sound so easy, and when they sent her the meal plan, that was not personalized, it didn't have her name on it, so she thought that was a red flag. And then she followed the plan, ended up gaining 9 pounds, which she says ended up making her fall back into her eating disorders because of it. And so I think some of these former customers might have some real claims here.
Yeah, and this is why the Attorney General took the case over. I mean, as a prosecutor, when you take a case like this, you're kind of looking at it like, do I want to be making a public statement here? And the way I would be seeing this when I was in that capacity is, there's something somewhat predatory about this. You have people who are vulnerable, people who have eating disorders and medical issues, and you're giving out, or allegedly giving out, nutrition advice that could have a dramatic impact on these people who are desperately in need of help. And you are not a professional, you don't have the background, you don't have the training, but you have great marketing. And therefore, these people who are looking for this are now being deceived, and they think this is the panacea. They think this is the guru, and in the end, it winds up harming them. So from a prosecutorial standpoint, this would be the kind of case that I would take on to kind of send a message out to the public that you just can't hang a shingle up there and be a great marketer when it can affect the health, safety, and welfare of the people that are paying you money desperate for help. Yeah. So I think it's a good suit.
Well, and there's a difference, because you'll see a lot of these influencers who post stuff like this, but they're not selling anything. They're just sharing their lifestyle, and I think that's different than actually selling something to a customer, making a plan, emailing them their plan. So that's very different, but it's something for people to look out for. Well, Bob, we appreciate you breaking down these stories. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Coming up next.